What a video. What an intro. You lot are probably like, what am I watching? Well, you're watching us, XP Property, who run our weekly live every Friday at 5 p.m. And we run you through the highs and lows of running multiple businesses, 5, 6, 7, and some 8-figure companies, which we've grown from scratch and scaled from nothing and made a load of mistakes along the way. And we share those mistakes and we share the successes with you weekly. Welcome back. Please do ask questions as we go through the episode. We would love to hear as many questions as possible that we can answer. And for podcast listeners, it's 17th of January, and we've got a load of things to run through today, especially a deep dive on our bank deal. But to start off, we'll be talking about HMOs and will they still be popular in 5 to 10 years? Because I feel like they're quite established now, and my investor said, what are you going to do when they're less popular? And I was thinking to myself, I don't know if they are going to be less popular. So we'll be going into detail of actually some data and stats of why or why not HMOs will still be alive in that time. We'll be talking about exchanging on a bank. We bought a bank. Maybe did we buy the building or the bank itself? Who knows? We'll be sharing that too. We'll be talking about our open day in Marlow. If you are interested in hearing about what the market sentiment is for selling stuff, very important thing for developers, we'll be sharing the uptake on our launch day, which is tomorrow. Thinking outside the box with speed of projects. A lot of what we do is common sense and applying common sense into business. And I'll be sharing a little bit of common sense that we put into a project. The importance of being on site. Sometimes you can run things remotely. Sometimes you need to be present, and we'll be sharing the areas that require that. When we talk about raising investment, and the two hardest things in property is finding the deals and the money. So we'll be coming on to that later. We'll be talking about the trouble with Airspace developments. I actually got sent an Airspace scheme today and discounted it for probably the merits that Ben's going to be sharing, and why you need SEO, which is search engine optimization, in your business in modern day. And then we go to Q&A.
Nice, good stuff. Interesting topic of conversation about HMOs. What was your investor saying then?
So investor came down on Tuesday from Yorkshire, and basically showed him a HMO that we were doing in Wallingford, and he said, what are you going to do when these don't work anymore? And I sort of said, I can't really see a world where HMO, and we'll come on to that. And that was what inspired it. I suppose for people out there that aren't HMO people or HMO owners, what is a HMO? And then equally on from that is, why we're doing them, and then why do we think that they are going to continue to have a place in the marketplace. So in XP, we've got HMOs. In Central Suites, we've obviously taken a little bit more to HMOs than anything else. But I think they're great. I think they're the best cash flowing business model without all the aggravation of service accommodation, and the return on time is really good too.
Yeah, I can't see a world where shared accommodation isn't going to be needed. People can't afford to get on the property ladder. You don't want to live with your mum and dad for the rest of your life. So it's a sort of natural progression. What a student's going to do, what a young professional straight out of uni going to do, where are they going to live? It's sort of, I don't see a world where they aren't a thing and a necessity.
I mean, go on to the next slide and we'll see.
Oh, here we go.
It's almost like you have seen it.
This slide.
I know, because I literally chucked it in there last minute, which is kind of why I was laughing. So the fundamentals are, and I have this argument with my dad all the time. He believes it's easier to be a property owner now than it was in sort of the 80s or 70s or when he was sort of growing up and buying houses. And the fundamentals are, back then you could buy a house with like 3 or 4 times your income. Now it's like an insane spread of what your income needs to be paying. And this is talking about gross income that they look at. They don't look at disposable income, because that's a very difficult metric to follow, because obviously people spend different amounts. But against your actual income, and if you're buying a house with a mortgage, they'll look at 4.5 times your income, for an example. And the fundamentals are the house pricing has gone up, but the income hasn't gone up at the same level. So what you have is this disparity of affordability, and presenting exactly for the watchers is the average age for a homeowner is going up. and that is somewhat driven by habit. Maybe we're a bit more footloose and we're happy sharing, or we're happy renting. But actually, the fundamentals are, let's just assume that it wasn't a behavioural change. It is just less affordable to buy your own property, and that's just the fundamentals. The income against asset value increase is not marrying up, and it's less easy to buy properties. And another really interesting stat out there is the second largest bank in 2022 and 2023 was the bank of mum and dad. So it's baby boomers that have collated a lot of value in the market. Typically, guess what, in their assets, they're then passing that down generations so that people can get onto the property ladder. So huge, macro behavioural, almost legacy economics there that takes a bit to get your head around. These are things that it's good to study and understand, because we also have an aging population. There's more 80-year-olds than 21-year-olds in the world in the UK at the moment. So sort of end of care living could be huge, even more than first time buying living. So everyone's talking about, is the potential support for Help to Buy going to come back? What about Help to Die? I literally just made that up. So
coin that trademark.
But if there's more volume in that area of the market, it is something to definitely consider. So the fundamentals are, we're taking a step back and looking at macro stuff, which is what you need to do from when someone asks you a question, is something going to be around for 5 to 10 years? That is hugely macro outlook that you need to look at. So let's look at my favorite little thing that we built in Central Suites, which is our room price comparison. And all it basically is it's comparing the other comparable option for a renter. So we're just going to assume that people are saving up to get onto the property ladder and buy their own property. And we're assuming that's their sort of mantra of what they want to do. And those on the screen that can see, it's obviously a lot easier if you see, but I'll try and explain it for the podcast listeners. Essentially, when we were delivering our HMO rooms to the market, even my mum was saying £850 a room, that sounds expensive. And I go, well, all the bills are included. And if you actually work out what that costs as a saving, it's hugely competitive and works out really well for the tenant. And to put that in perspective, if you wanted to rent one of our rooms in Henley-on-Thames, that's an ensuite bedroom, you probably have about 60 metres squared of shared utility kitchen, lounge and cinema room area to share. So that's a much larger space than you would have if you had a one-bedroom flat. We've recently done a back-to-brick renovation, and we can afford to spend good money on these assets because we charge we basically have a model where, because we've got multiple rooms under one roof, it enables us to have more surplus capital to make them the best quality stock in Henley. So you've got the best stock at 850, including all the bills, council tax, electricity, gas, water, furnishing, Wi-Fi and TV, etc., etc. Against, if that person were to walk down the street and try something else, and the something else in this context is a single let flat, they'll be paying a minimum of £1,000 per month. Is actually probably a bit shy. They'll probably be paying a little bit more in Henley at the moment. Council tax would be a minimum of £125, all of the bills inclusive. We think that would come to a minimum of £1,370, and they'd probably be tied in for a minimum of 12 months, maybe 24 months. It wouldn't be as well fitted out because the margins are a lot thinner on single let. So the landlords don't want to reinvest their capital expenditure to put in a new kitchen or redo the bathroom. And you end up with a pretty poor quality property for £1,370 a month, and against paying £850. And if you actually work that out as a year's savings, it's £520 per month. And the savings per year is £6,240 per year. So if you assume like traveling, that's 4 holidays. If you want to put a deposit down on a house, that could be, within 5 years, you could have a decent deposit towards a house. So this is actually how we see ourselves fitting in the market. It's a well-required product that slots right in between buying your own house and actually renting other stock that's a good quality. People care about the tenants, and it's flexible. You can move into our house and serve shorter notice than moving into a one-bedroom flat if there's a change in your job, or you need to relocate, or you're moving in with your significant other. So, we just think this model is going to only get stronger. It stood the test of time when interest rates pushed HMO mortgages up to like 7 or 8%. And we were still making a net margin. Single lets weren't. So like as a landlord, great. The high cash flow, so it enables us to grow our portfolio much stronger than if we were building a buy-to-let portfolio. And yeah, we love it. We think that this is here for a very long period of time, and it is the way the market is going. And to be quite frank, if I was relocating to a new area and I was, well, not even single, in a relationship or single, and I had no social life outside of work, and it was a really good product, I would say there's a lot of bad HMOs out there, but if it was a really good product, I'd choose the shared living model. I think it's cool. And we, it sounds weird meeting a load of strangers, but we actually sometimes visit our properties and all of the tenants are going out on a Sunday together for a Sunday roast. And it's really nice to see that dynamic build and building that community. And we have seen our tenants then go on and live together after. So they buy their own house together, or whether they rent a 2-bedroom flat thereafter, because they do want a bit more privacy. So absolutely love it. I think it's here to stay, and it's great for landlords like us that really want to create value in the market. And that's really what entrepreneurialism is, solving a problem. And we've solved the problem. If in what world a single let's going to get cheaper than our rooms? No world. So where is this going to go? It's only going to get stronger.
Yeah, nice. I was going to say, as you finish the financials, like the big thing for me that hasn't been touched on was the social side of stuff, which you've now mentioned. I think, when I was moving to London for the first time, didn't really know anyone in Clapham. Yeah, living with 7 other young professionals, getting to know new people, mingling with new sort of social circles. It was amazing. It was such a good time of my life. You have a lot of fun, and living in that type of co-living shared house environment, I think straight out of uni is a fantastic place to be. So yeah, I don't think this is going anywhere. I think it's only going to get stronger, like you say. Cool. Big news. We exchanged yesterday on a bank. So we're going to do a bit of a deeper dive, not a full deep dive like some of our previous sort of hour-long sessions where we've really gone to town, but we're going to do probably 10-15 minutes on sort of the acquisition, finding it, structuring it, and then I'll do a little bit on our proposals for the site. So what are we doing from a design perspective? What planning approvals are we going for? And where are we trying to end up with the scheme? So Jack can take it away with the finding and the funding. That's your neck of the woods. Exciting times.
We wanted to do a bit of a deep dive on this to get you on track to finding your next project and how to deliver it. So believe it or not, this was actually from an estate agent that put in a specific request to the landlord to see if they'd be open to selling it. So it's technically off market. We've done quite a lot with that agent. We've built a good relationship with them. They're actually coincidentally in the office next door to us. And it's definitely been a relationship driven deal that we've sourced. And we had to show willing, communicate where we need to communicate. Otherwise, there may have been a situation where we'd have potentially missed out on this particular project. The fundamentals were the existing owner were a property trader. They bought it, via open market. It had a lease in place with Halifax Bank, which was a significant amount of time beyond today's date. I think it was another something like 50 years. And obviously, high street retail for banks is less popular nowadays. There's all these internet banks that are taking the markets by storm, and the old players are struggling to sustain a footprint on retail and also online presence. So Halifax wanted out. Therefore, they needed to agree a deed of surrender. The trader wanted to take they probably bought a lot lower, taking the liability of that existing low income lease. And we wanted to buy the building with vacant possession to add value via development planning, etc., etc. So we managed to agree a value. It went quiet for a little while because there was another person that was interested, who was an owner-occupier, actually a dentist, who will be tapping up now, see if they want the ground floor. But they were interested in taking the whole building, and it was kind of us against them. And I'm not entirely sure how the dentist actually got wind of it. Maybe it was when it was being sold or whatever. So it went a bit quiet, and we were trying to win it, and I felt like that we might have been struggling to compete with a bid of value, because obviously when you have an owner-occupier, it's sometimes difficult because you're actually bidding for two different reasons. We're bidding as a development site, so it has a development land value, whereas they're bidding to run a business. Therefore, they might be willing to pay more, they might be willing to pay less. So we were up against this dentist. It went a little bit quiet. We kept a few nudges in. Rule number one with acquisitions: always follow up. Always chase those deals. They're not going to chase you. It's deals down. The dentist wanted to run this by the ground floor retail and also the rear office space as, you know, big practice essentially. And there's 3 flats, existing flats above, which are quite big flats. And a few of them, well, all 3 of them really are a bit tired and need a bit of renovation. But anyway, we kept at it. We got a sniff that the dentist might not be able to be a performable party. And we, at this point, had ran our numbers looking at a really difficult floodplain. And what Ben is showing here is actually the Matterport 3D virtual tour, which is actually something that XP Surveys did for XP Properties in this instance, because it was off market and because I don't think a floor plan's been drawn of this property for probably decades. We didn't really know what we were buying. It was very difficult with all the levels and sizes of the building to actually depict the exact size of this building. So we put in a conditional proposal of an offer, which was provisionally accepted. The provision was, we want to do a Matterport survey. We want to get an understanding of the size to just double check our sizes and really ensure that we're not missing any grey areas or haven't messed up. Realistically, there's so much human error with the laser, especially with me. You know, I'm not, I'm a builder at the end of the day. I can sort of measure how much 3/4 of brickwork is, but measuring a building is something that people in our team are you know, the best at, but not necessarily myself. So we did the Matterport 3D virtual tour. We got the data back. We pulled everything around. Ben got his eyes in and had a look at the potential scope on the site, and we were comfortable to stick to our bid. Bid was then accepted. And just a tip from a negotiation perspective is, you know, we want our cake and eat it. When we negotiate a deal, we want to get the exchange value as down as low as possible, and we want to get the period between exchange and completion as long as possible, because that enables us to put less cash up front, and also in the period between exchange and completion to have more time to de-risk the deal, work on planning, you know, go to tender, understand what we're doing with the site, get the completion funds in place, etc., etc. So back and forth with the trader, and obviously they were as sharp as anything, because a property trader who's buying and selling sites is, you know, should be king of negotiation. And this guy was pretty hard to run a bargain or a negotiation with, and essentially he was being a stickler on 10% exchange. And I said, I can give you the 10% exchange, but I want a period between exchange and completion. So we've agreed 3 months between exchange and completion. Price was agreed, contracts were out, leagues were started, and that is how we secured the site. I'll let Ben talk a little bit more about like the scope of the site, because it is quite a convoluted way of how we address what we could do with a particular site, but I'll take it into the funding stage, and then Ben can sort of dovetail onto the design and construction. So huge, obviously, so a massive site. So it's basically, I think, is it 5 stories? It's basement, retail, and ground floor. You've got office space first and ground floor 2, and then you've got 3 apartments above there. You've also got a car park at the back. So we kind of didn't really know exactly the way that the planning would lay out, but we do know it's grade 2 listed. And we do know there's footprint there that's got to be something. So we wanted to take this building to planning before we got complicated with the development lender, because we didn't really know exactly what the outcome would be. We know that there's 3 flats, we know that there's retail, we know that we can use potentially Class G, we know that there's potential full planning for converting the offices and maybe some new build out the back of the site, but we didn't know exactly what it looks at. Obviously, our bid price is based on worst case scenario. So we know our worst case what we can get out, and that's basically refurbish everything and split it all up and sell it. We still get out and make a healthy profit. But so that's taken care of the risk of the bid price. But the messing around with banks, we would normally have to buy this on the bridge with an investor, do the planning. While we're doing the planning, essentially wait for the full consents to be agreed, and then once it's fully consented, we then have a full scheme we could take either to the same lender or a new lender and refinance that onto a development facility. We didn't really want to do that because of the aggro, so we're fortunate that we're buying this completely with the investor finance. One investor has come in to buy the whole site, and that is the debt piece and the equity piece. And the plan of action is, we do the planning, we do some light works to the flats to get a head start, and we then refinance once we have an exact decision notice and an idea of what we're doing onto a development facility, because then there's no ambiguity for the banks. A underwriter's worst nightmare is asking you what you're doing, and you're like, well, we could do this or we could do this, that means absolute sod all to them. That will confuse them to hell. I mean, it confuses them to hell anyway, even when you've got a clear planning and decision notice. So the fundamentals are just having that clear path of action, phase it into one delivery point, because we do like phasing things. And on this one, we're kind of like maybe a soft phase one, but big phase two, which is very clear. And that is how we are going to fund it. So if you're a debt lender out there and you love getting money out the door at like 5%, hit us up. We've got a big lumpy loan that you could do for us. And also, if you're an investor and you want to be on the sort of waiting list for the next scheme like this that we take on, yeah, hit us up too.
Nice. Cool. So yeah, we're due to complete on this now. What did you agree? 3 or 4 months?
3 months.
3 months. Cool. So 3 months time we'll be completing on this. So we've already been busy bustling away in the background with the planning applications. Like Jack says, we are phasing this in numerous phases. It's getting quite confusing already, but fundamentally the stuff that isn't going to change, or the sort of the easy wins for us, are these 3 flats at first, second and third floor level. So these 3 over here, they're currently arranged that they've got this awkward middle bedroom, which the previous owners probably shouldn't have been letting out, but it's got this kind of like funny red wall in between, which let light in, borrowed light in from the rear.
In all fairness, I think it was a single let flat, so it's down to the tenant what they use that.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah,
fair. So we are turning each floor plate into a 3-bed HMO. So at the moment they're kind of 2-bed flats, but we can rearrange the space to get 3-bed HMO. So that will again supercharge the rental yield. Because we had the survey done, the drawings done, we were able to go into town, go to town a little bit more on even more enhanced value. So basically, we will be going in for a slight amendment to the internal stair core, which would hopefully allow us to get an extra bedroom up on the top floor level, where we'll get a roof light into one of the bedrooms to get light in. So that allow us to open up that floor plate into 4 rooms. And what we're also looking at doing, instead of having 3 beds, is having 1 3-bed and then utilizing the top 2 floors to create even more bedrooms, because we are then able to put the kitchen down at the lower level and share the kitchen between the 2 floors, making more room for extra bedrooms. So yeah, again, that's going to supercharge the yield. That does require listed building consent, because we want to mess around with some of the stair locations, and also it does require full planning application, because we're going from C4 HMO to a sui generis HMO, which is for people for HMOs above 6 persons. Cool. So that sort of takes care of the top 3 floors. Like Jack says, this front ground floor retail space and basement, the idea with that is that just gets carved off completely, and that becomes lettable space for a commercial tenant. And then what we are then left with is this whole rear of the site. So this whole section here that I'm circling, it's about, in fact, I don't even know how big it is. I would estimate probably 2,500 square feet, something like that, to then play around with from a planning perspective. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky, whereby we are phasing things like we do a lot of the time in our schemes. We will be going in for Class MA. So we mentioned that it was listed. Its listing was the front of the site, and when you see the building, like that is clearly the part that was listed, and then the rear extensions have evolved over time. But because it is listed at the front, you can't use Class MA on that part of the building, but we have submitted an application to utilize Class MA for the rear of the site, which is currently arranged as offices, to convert those offices into flats. So with Class MA, you can't make any external changes. So purely what we're doing is trying to change the use. And we often use this in our planning strategy, whereby we're creating a fallback position. So our fallback position in this perspective is Class MA use, Class MA permitted development from office to residential. We've changed the use to residential. Therefore, any further applications that we make will be, we've already established the use as residential. So that's another less thing to tick off the box from a planning perspective. So that's why we would typically go into Class MA change of use, and then we'll add enhancements with a full planning application thereafter. And that full planning application basically looks a little bit like this. So, oh, you can't see that screen. That's useful. Let me share again, share screen, entire screen, that one. Cool. So yes, this rear elevation will go from looking like this, and I can show you actually from the outside via the Matterport. I mean, these Matterport virtual tours, I know Jack said, we do them within XP surveys. They are incredibly useful for things like this, for shareholder engagement, sharing it with your architects, sharing it with your engineers, sharing it with your investors. It just helps you, to no end, basically. So this is our part of the thing. So it comes up to this, where this drain pipe is. And all the way up to where this 3-story building is on the left hand side. So all of this ground and first floor, all back to the listed section at the front, is what we have to play with. And what we plan on doing is adding an extra floor, basically. So you can sort of clearly see there's a precedent here. You've got a 3-story building, 2-story building, 3-story building, 2-story building over here. So I don't think it's too much of a hard push for us to then raise this eaves level up and effectively kind of mirror some of the window fenestration that's neighboring the property. So with that, we get an additional, I think it's something like 70 square meters. Again, fantastic space to get a 2-bed flat. And we can convert the existing first floor to a further flat as well. So with this scheme that I'm showing on screen, where we hope to end up to the rear of the site is effectively a 3-bed flat on the internal first floor, which will be originally part of the change of use application. We'll then enhance the scheme with various roof lights and new windows to get a better layout in this space. We'll have a 1-bedroom flat at the existing first floor office level, which is this one at the top here. We'll squeeze in a studio on the ground floor level, which is currently occupied by plant area and car parking spaces. And then on the top floor, which was the extended section that I mentioned, looking at the rear, actually, sorry, it is only about 61 square meters. So we managed to get a 2-bed, 3-person flat on this new extension above the rear of the building. So effectively getting 4 flats to the rear, 3 flats to the front, which will be at least 9 bedrooms from a HMO perspective, commercial retail unit on the ground and basement, and then still maintaining a couple of car parking spaces on the ground floor. So that is the grand plan. Stay tuned to see how it unfolds, and if we manage to get this through planning, we'll be progressing things with these weekly lives. We'll probably come back in about 3 months' time, and hopefully by then we have a planning approval in place. I think Jack's just been kicked out, I think. Anyway, so that is the bank. Would love to answer any questions you've got on this. It's a very, very complicated site. We realize that. I've just blitzed through it very, very quickly. So happy to answer any questions that you may have. And this may actually be one that we sneak into one of our site tours later on in the year. So if you are interested in coming along to one of our site tours, there should be a link down in the description. We generally do 2 or 3 a year. We've got our 23-unit scheme about probably a 5-minute walk from this site. So it sort of makes sense that we should add this into the site tour days that we do later in the year. So yes, get your register your interest down below. There should be a link somewhere in the description, or if you're on the podcast, just message us and we can send you a link to it. But yeah, that is the bank. Anything else you wanted to talk about?
You lost me there.
Yeah, it's all right. We're
My
done.
Wi-Fi went down in the office, so apologies.
It's all right. We're done on the bank. Unless there's anything else you wanted to run through, I've talked about the design. Cool, sweet. So on to some other exciting stuff.
I do have a fun story about the bank.
Oh, go on then.
When I was in America, everyone was like, "What are you up to?" And I said, "We're buying a bank," and they took it literally like we're going to be buying the actual bank that lends money. And I decided to run with it after they thought that. Anyway,
yeah, we definitely need a bit more zeros in our bank account to be doing that, don't we? Maybe one day. XP Bank, XP Finance. There you go. It's got a good ring to it. Cool. So on to point number 3, which is our open day in Marlow. Obviously, sales are fundamental to a developer. It is something that's extremely difficult to get right. And if you drag out your sales process, you really severely impact your profit margin, because all you're doing is holding the most debt you've ever had on the site because you've finished the scheme. So your debt is at its highest, and your interest rates that you are paying are then sky high for those, monthly interest payments. So when you're at the end of a scheme, you really need to get sold as fast as you possibly can, which in Marlow seems to be a very, very popular thing. So we have 2 agents on this site. We've got Savills, and we've got a more local agent called Richard Jackson, who is the person or company that actually introduced us to the bank. So like I say, like Jack said, they sort of are next to us in the office. We've got a really good relationship with them. They have got a number of viewings booked in for tomorrow, and we're looking forward to kind of working with them on the sales here. So we've got split agents, Savills and Richard Jackson's. We also had this week 6 viewings, which were off the back of our own advertising. So when we do our site hoarding, which we've spoken about numerous times in the past on these weekly lives, the importance of having that hoarding and that site presence. We had 6 viewings, which our own sales consultant did, because those were registered before we brought on the sales agents. So any sale that we make through that process will obviously be, a lot cheaper for us in terms of agency fees, because we're not paying, 1.5% or whatever we're paying to the agents. So the big news, I guess, is that throughout the marketing period that we've had going, we have registered over 50 people viewing this development tomorrow, which is ridiculous. Really excited because we've already had 2 people make offers on the site, both of which haven't even seen the site, and one of them was at asking price and the other one was like 15 grand shy of asking price. So we're really excited about tomorrow, because there's clearly huge demand for these assets. They're in a great location off of West Street in Marlow, which is basically just off of one of the main high streets. There's various kind of public parking spaces, car parks locally. And these are really, really quirky apartments. There is 8 flats. And if you've not been following and you're new to seeing this project for the first time, it's our West Street project in Marlow. We're converting the front offices into 4 flats, and then we're converting what was a dance studio into a further 4 flats. So you've got an entrance through an undercroft, which you can see I'm pointing out on the right hand side. So off the main road, you go through an undercroft, which is a listed building, which looks fantastic on the main high street. And then you go into this little muse, quirky kind of concealed development, where every single flat in this development is a masonette. It has its own front entrance. There's no shared communal area where you've got doors off of a communal corridor. They all have their own front entrance. 4 of them have their own private courtyards, and then the other 4, because of space requirements, they just don't have access to outdoor space in terms of private amenity. So yeah, really excited about this scheme. You can see the CGI on the screen if you're watching on the video podcast. Really high-end product for us. It's somewhere between 550 and 600 pounds a square foot in terms of where we're expecting these to sell for. And yeah, I'm super excited to see what the feedback is from yesterday. We've been really scurrying around a lot this week to get the show flat done. So flat 3 within this development is going to be fitted out. It's a 2-bed flat. We've got furnishings coming in from Loft Furniture. We've been accessorizing those furnishings with plant pots and cookbooks and TVs and all that sort of stuff. And Mairead from our team has been working hard to kind of make that looking as tip top as it can. And the builder's been busting a gut basically to try and get that show flat finished. It is literally cut to the wire because the worktops are being installed literally as we speak, I think, on a Friday. So yeah, super excited to see how that plays out with 50 viewings. If you look at what is a standard conversion rate of a viewing? 5%?
I would have thought it's probably going to be, I would have thought it's probably going to be about 5%. The thing is, you do get property. So, for example, cheap properties, your conversion rate will be really, really low. Expensive properties, your conversion rate will be really high. These are kind of like mid-level. So I would have thought a conversion rate So as a small flat in London, you might do 80 viewings to get a sale, whereas a large £6 million house in London, you might do 8 viewings and get a sale.
Yeah, I see what I mean.
So these are mid-tables. I'll probably say like 5 to 6%.
Yeah, so we'll feedback next week. I mean, based on that, let's say it is 5%. So you're talking potentially 3 of these 8 sold with the viewings, with the 5 viewings that 50 viewings that we have.
I reckon because it's Marlow, it'll be higher.
Yeah, I'm expecting by the end of next week to have 5 good offers off the 8. That's where I'm hanging my hat. Yeah, let us know down below. What do you think?
Not all in the same flats. Just 5 buyers for 1 flat and 7 knocking around.
Yeah. No,
we might have to move to Marlow, Ben.
I wouldn't mind that, to be fair. Lovely place to live. I mean, like I say, we've already had a asking price offer for this one at the rear, and the show flat has been offered on by somebody. Just to put it in perspective, I think it's on the market for maybe 395 or 400, and I think they came in straight off the bat without even viewing and even wanting to view it at 370. So to have those two, offers without anyone even viewing them, I think we're in a really good place. So fingers crossed. I could be being way too optimistic and nothing come of it, but 50 viewings is a lot.
I mean, that is nuts. That is nuts.
Insane. Yeah. And just one thing I actually wanted to say on the viewing day and the launch day that you make, sort of, you need to try and make the site as tidy as possible. It's still a construction site. Only the show home is finished. So as you go through this undercroft entrance, it is muddy. They've just been digging trenches for utilities, all that sort of stuff. So, the sorts of things that we're going to be doing is just making sure that the site is as tidy as possible, putting sort of DPM, damp-proof membranes kind of down for people to kind of walk along and across to kind of get to the show flat. You don't want people to be walking around with muddy feet. Within the show flat, we've got overshoes, and we've also got, clear plastic stuff to go over the carpets and the timber flooring to sort of protect the flooring and the carpets, for example. So yeah, just a few tips there if you're doing launch days and open days, just to make sure that it's presented as well as it possibly could be. Cool.
Yeah, this was just kind of like a very quick top tip that I wanted to share with everyone. So if you've seen any of our social media channels on Central Suites, this is like the absolute pain in the arse project that we've taken on, but it's just the nature of it with going from one grey listed building to another. But the long and short of it is we thought this building had a failing lintel across the retail shop. It actually transpired that the wall in the basement that was holding the building up behind a lot of like storage stuff and actually some polythene was failing. Which meant we had to like jump to ship and resolve the big structural problems that we've dealt with. But you know what they say, stormy seas make good sailors. I kind of enjoyed it at the same time of it being painful. So that's you learn more on these types of projects. But anyway, and also it's great to show investors around it. This was the investor that said, "What do you do when HMOs are not popular anymore?" Because like you kind of show when you take on a project that's this challenging, or as challenging as Colney Hatch Lane, where you're doing a respective basement, you're the right people to be working with in the industry. And I would definitely recommend, if you are raising capital, show them a difficult project rather than an easy one, because it shows your skill level. But the tip for that particular project is because the building was falling over, and because we had to get listed building consent to do anything, so we had full planning by the day that we had completed it. We had already preloaded all of that. We were already well ahead of schedule, which is a risk on our part. But we obviously didn't know that it was going to have these structural problems. You don't know what you can't control, and you can't get worried about that. But what did happen is we had to submit listed building consent once we had a remedial plan from the structural engineer to basically redo this whole structure of this building, which did delay the project. The council took probably 3 to 4 months, and there was only a limited amount of work that we could continue with while we were waiting for those 3 to 4 months. Now, the issue I now have is we're chasing our tail a bit on this, because we've got an investor on board, we've got the debt lender on board. Both were made aware immediately that this is probably going to overrun the original term of both loans. So that's already been discussed, and we've actually already done a lease extension with the investor, and we're doing another lease extension with the bank. These are things that you have to deal with. But the principle is we need to speed things up. And there are many ways that you can actually look at being creative once you're on site to do that. So the long and short of it is one of the conditions that of the planning is we need to put in designs for windows, that all the rear windows, when I walked around with the heritage lady, she said I'd be fine if you did UPVC at the back. What actually happens in the planning application, exactly what they always do, they change their mind. And she said I want all of them to be timber windows with heritage effect, and also there's a stipulation on the glazing now, because it's going to be a HMO and we're paying for the heating, and also just from a durability of owning an asset, I wanted to have slimline profile double glazing on those window units at the back. Now, what I'm getting at here, and why it comes down to just being a bit creative, is we had to submit drawings to basically get that discharge of condition for the windows, but I didn't know, or the joinery company didn't know, whether they would need to fit this type of window or this type of window. So it again sat waiting for these windows. Now everything's done. Everything internally is completely done. We've even decorated internally. So we're just literally waiting on these windows details to be approved by the council, which was submitted weeks and weeks and weeks ago. Discharge of conditions doesn't have a time period where they need to come back to you, and they are really slow, and we're chasing every week. So what I've actually agreed to do is the stipulation that the council had and the heritage lady had an issue was not actually the timber frames itself, it was actually their glazing and how thick. Is we've ordered the thicker timber windows, and either level, whether it's single glazing or double glazing, can actually go into the same windows. So the principle is, rather than waiting weeks and weeks and weeks for the discharging conditions and then wait 6 weeks as lead time for these timber windows to be joined, we just ordered it. So we're now running two things in tangent, and the only thing we need to know is the size of the glazing panels, and that actually doesn't change anything or delay anything. It just means we fit double glazing or single glazing units, and the putty in the windows is how they actually fit those windows in. So I thought that would be a good top tip, like what can you strip back to order items already to get ahead of the game, and that maybe even being like, while you're doing external works, can you do some internal works, or while you're doing particular other things, it might be. But anyway, essentially that's just an idea that, a bit of an idea of being creative to sort of run in tangent with any particular delays that you may face, so that you can get ahead of the game and speed projects up.
Yeah, sometimes you just got to take a bit of a risk. It's as simple as that. You can't wait for the planning authority to do what they need to do. Cool. If you get value from these podcasts, we would love you to rate us on Spotify, leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and more importantly, just share it with one person. Like if you think that you've got a lot of property people in your circle, or business owners, just share it with them. We know that you get value from it because you tell us, which is amazing, but we just want to share it as wide and as far as possible. So share it with one person that you think would get value from this. Cool. And then on Monday, Tuesday this week, the Aura team went off on a couple of our sites to see how things were progressing. And it just made me realize how important it is getting on site to look at the detail of how things are being constructed, to look at how things practically work and sensibly work. And I guess this is sort of more mostly for the architects that are listening. And, when you're sat in front of a computer screen and you're drawing lines on a computer, it costs somebody money. And I've saved huge amounts of money on our schemes by understanding how things are put together and being efficient with my designs, whereby I'm stripping back one layer of plasterboard, or I'm doing things slightly differently in terms of my fire breaks, and I've only got that understanding because I've seen things being put together on site. I've spoken to contractors, and I think there's often this architect versus contractor mentality when it should be a really joined up thinking type process. Contractors do see things face to face. They understand how things can practically work, and that should get fed back to an architect who draws things in a way that looks great on a piece of paper but isn't always practical to actually install or work correctly as it should. So it was just a note to make sure that you're getting on site. If you're a property developer, if you're new to this, there is no more. There's nothing more valuable than actually seeing how a contractor is working on site and how he's putting things together, how he's installing his wiring, why he's doing boxing around certain things. What does the type of installation look like? What are the different types of plasterboard that he's using? How is he sealing things from a fire perspective, from an acoustic perspective? All of these things really help you as a property developer hone your skills, and it also allows you to spot mistakes quickly. If you know how things should be put together because you've seen it numerous times on site, you go on one of your new sites with a new contractor that you're working with and he's doing something in a certain way, and it's wrong because you've seen it before and you know what it should look like, you've then got the upper hand. They can't bullshit you or pull the wool over your eyes, and you can say, no, do it again, that isn't correct, X, Y, and Z. So yeah, the importance of being on site. And just a couple of shots from the day. This one's a pair of semis.
Share your screen.
Oh, what an idiot.
There you go.
There we go. That's better.
I was wondering whether you're like teeing us up to it. And
no, sorry. Yeah, my bad. There it is. Yeah, some really, really cool projects. So this was if you'd seen what was before, it was like it wasn't even a chalet bungalow. It was literally just a bungalow on this wide plot. And now we've got 2 large pairs of semis, 4-bedroom properties, family homes. It was owned by a mother and son and the rest of their family. The mother is taking one side, one house, and the son is taking the other house. So they're both designed in slightly different ways with slightly different tastes in terms of tiling and finishes and all this sort of stuff. So really cool project to go to. This is a corner plot, which is a new build, which we're going to be doing a video on the Aura YouTube channel very soon. It's for a young couple. Their mum and dad, or one of the couple's mums and dads lives in this house, which you can just see on the left hand side of the image. They've carved off the corner section of the side plot, and we achieved planning permission for a 3-bedroom new build house, which went through various rounds of planning. It's ended up in a state where I actually way prefer some of the previous iterations, but the planning authority weren't having it. But this is now up to first floor level. Actually, it's the one we're stood in here, so this one on the left. So the ground floor walls have been created, steelwork's going in, and it's going up super fast. They've only been on site for about 6 weeks and it's already at that stage. So yeah, very excited to see this one come together. And then we've got a project in Bromley, which is a really, really large renovation and extension of a detached property there, which I think they're spending the best part of 700 grand, completely going to town on this property with air conditioning, underfloor heating. Yeah, really, really fantastic site. And when you go to site, you see little details like this, which you can see on the right hand side. This is a sort of shout out to Chris, the structural engineer. We've got a valley behind this section, and we've got a steel beam that projects out to create an overhang at the rear of the property. But to get the rainwater pipe out from that valley, we had to effectively sort of weld a box section into the steel to get the rainwater pipe down through. So really quirky details, and these are the sorts of things that you sometimes have to kind of get to site and firefight and find ideas and find solutions. And yeah, I loved seeing that. It was great. Cool. If you are in property development, if you're a business owner, if you're looking to get into property investment and development, we would love to work with you. We do have investment opportunities at the moment, anything from 50 grand all the way up to £2.5 million. We've got opportunities to invest that type of capital within our schemes. So we would love to have a chat. We can offer varying degrees of security. We want people that want to work with us longer term. We are in this for the long run. So we want to be rolling investments over and over and over, doing bigger and better deals and recirculating that cash and effectively hoping to build wealth for you as well as us. So yeah, we are open for investment. Cool. And something that I wanted to jump onto. So we've mentioned Beckton Court in the past, which is our airspace development. We've got a block of 9 flats, which we bought the freehold for, and we are building 2 flats on top of that block of 9 flats. It's currently a 3-story building. We're adding a 4th story and turning it into two flats. You can see it on screen. It's sort of red brick with a tiled mansard style roof. That red brick isn't existing. That red brick is a overclad brick system that we're going to be installing. So we're basically giving it a whole new facelift whilst adding the airspace. And I spent an hour and 3/4 speaking to some quite disgruntled leaseholders on Monday. I don't think I've even told you, Jack, that I had this call. But we spoke with the managing agent for the block, about 5 or 6 of the leaseholders, some of them residents, some of them not residents, were on the call, and they clearly had their objections and their concerns over the works that we were looking to carry out. It's not a nice thing to do when you're living in situ in a block of flats and there's loads of work going on around you, lots of noise, lots of dust, etc. I completely get that. But it is part of the process and we are going to have to do it. So I was fielding a lot of questions, but it made me realize kind of what are the pros and cons here of doing an airspace development. And I'm going to talk you through a couple of the key ones I think that you should be aware of if you are venturing into airspace developments. There's some fundamentals that you're going to have to think about when you get into it. So the first big one since Grenfell is fire. Building control are way hotter now on fire regulations and getting third-party fire consultants to provide a strategy and make sure that the fire detection, the fire escapes are adequate and suitable. So that is one of the biggest things I think nowadays, making sure that from a fire perspective, you are compliant and you are taking into account the existing systems within the property and the new systems that you're going to be installing in your airspace as well. That sort of leads on to the cladding process, and some of the big questions we had yesterday was, is our insurance going to skyrocket because you're cladding the building? And I think there's obviously a lot of stuff in the news since Grenfell. There's a lot of chat about the cladding process and what is called EWS, which is I think actually stands for, I don't know what it stands for, external wall something. Anyway, the EWS is basically the certificates that
external wall structure, I think. Yeah,
I can't remember what it stands for, but it's the sort of certification now, the process that people have to have an EWS certificate to sell a block, to sell a flat within a block that has a cladding system. Yeah, external wall system. Cool. I mean, in reality, there are limitations, and this is something I was trying to say to them, that actually only it's mainly relevant to buildings over 5 stories. So we still fall short of that. But obviously, when people hear cladding, and they get understandably concerned about it, and I sort of had to then say, okay, yes, it is a type of cladding that we are using, but it's a brick basically. It's not like we're using some aluminium panels that have combustible insulation behind it. We are specifying a brick. It isn't combustible, but that's what the cladding process and the EWS process is all about, to make sure that you're not using combustible materials within the fabric of the building. So I had to do a lot of explaining around kind of that process, and the fact that everything that we do will be checked by building control, will be checked by a warranty provider, we'll have a third-party fire consultant sign off, and we have no intentions of creating a more unsafe building than it currently is by overcladding the property. So yeah, when you're working in airspace and you're doing some work to the existing building fabric, cladding and EWS is definitely something you should be looking at. And then you've got the legal process. It's fraught with issues. Even when we've looked to try and sell this property, we've had to serve Section 5 notices, which is effectively notifying the leaseholders that you are selling the freehold of the property. So effectively, with the leasehold kind of reforms and things like that, leaseholders have the opportunity to enfranchise the block. So if more than 50% of the leaseholders club together and say, actually, I want to buy the freehold, they can, and they have to have the right to buy that freehold before it's sold to anyone else. So Section 5 notice is effectively notifying the leaseholders that we're looking to sell the property, and it's giving them a first sort of right of refusal to go and buy that freehold if they want to. So the legal process is very, very complicated. You've also got the party wall process, which forms part of that sort of legal work as such. With Airspace, you're obviously looking to build on top of something. It already has legal rights associated with that, so you've got to be really clear in the legal work that you have the right to build on top of it, that you go through the right party wall process, that you're providing schedules of conditions of the existing property to make sure that anything you do on top isn't detrimental to the flats below. Which leads on to the structure. So I actually found out, Jack, a couple of on the call, that they had recently, or I think it was almost 10 years ago now, actually, they did have some subsidence claims So they have done some work on some of the corners of the property near the trees on the right hand side, which has a structural adequacy certificate, but they've done remedial work to kind of satisfy that. But again, when you're dealing with airspace, you're putting extra load, extra weight on top of a building. So you have to make sure that the existing structure is capable of taking that extra load. So you have to check the foundations are adequate. You have to check there is what's called disproportionate collapse within inside the building. So these are all things that your structural engineer is going to have to look at, and I would suggest you do that even before buying the site. You want to get through planning, get to detailed design to then start those investigations. We've already had trial pits carried out on this property before we bought the site to make sure that the structure is suitable for adding this extra floor. And when you're buying airspace and you're buying a freehold, you have historic things to deal with. We've probably spent 20 minutes on the call talking about the bin store and the issues that they've had with the bin store and people fly tipping and all this. And it wasn't really relevant to me, but you will be inheriting some of these things, to deal with. And, they're now sort of saying, well, if you want to sell the flats, you want it to be as presentable as possible. You don't want the bin store at the front of the property to be overflowing with vermin and rubbish. And they've got a valid point. But what they're angling at is that we as developers kind of contribute to kind of making it better for them. So it does have, it comes with history when you're buying a freehold where there's an existing block that's already managed. And then the big one for them was, how is this going to affect me? I work from home during the day. How noisy is it going to be? What protection can you give us? Like, what is the day-to-day health and safety going to be? Are you having air quality surveys carried out to make sure that it is actually safe? Is there asbestos in the roof? How is that being dealt with? These are all the questions that the leaseholders are likely to ask. And airspace definitely can be very profitable, but it's fraught with issues. And I'd say these are the top 7 things you should be thinking about, the final one being that health and safety piece. So there is asbestos in the soffits and Artex ceilings, etc., in the communal area. So we're going to have to deal with that safely. So yeah, not for the faint-hearted, but there is value up there if you can make the figures work. Cool. Be quick on this to kind of finish off point number 8. It's about SEO, and I think if you're running service-based businesses and you're listening to this, you should absolutely be thinking as soon as you start your business, how you can get your business as high as possible in the Google rankings as you possibly can. We've done a fantastic job, I would say, in Aura from an SEO perspective, because 6 years ago, I felt like it was probably the top priority from a marketing perspective to have evergreen content within the website, to build in as many keywords from a Google perspective as possible to make sure that when people are searching for certain search terms, that you're going to come up top of the list. Because, nowadays, what do people do when they want something? Well, actually, they probably ask ChatGPT, but, most of the time they will ask Google, architects in my area, architects in Surrey, everyone.
Ben, ChatGPT uses search engine, so it's technically
the same thing. Yeah. So either way, using search engine optimization to enhance your lead flow, your inquiries, I just think is so important. And if you're not doing it, you probably want to spend about £1,000 a month, I would say, if you've got a business somewhere between like 200 grand and a £1 million turnover. You could probably get away with spending £1,000 a month on somebody in the background optimizing your pages, creating landing pages for sales, creating blog pages to enhance your keywords, and also doing some sort of technical SEO in the background to make sure that your website is as fast as it possibly can be, and is as optimized as it possibly can be for people finding you online. So yeah, that's it really.
Yeah, I'd just like to add on that, actually, that we've talked about marketing quite a lot, but SEO is one form of marketing and actually falls kind of into sales as well. So what Ben's getting at is the importance and ease of driving business to your business from the value of getting a better ranking on Google. But there are other ways to win business, obviously. So this is just an element of it.
This is like the organic stuff that is like the foundations, I would say, of your website. because you can drive paid traffic to your website with pay-per-click advertising, for example, but that will cost you a huge amount of money. Whereas when you build from foundations up, utilizing good SEO tactics and optimizations, you're setting your business and your website up for success from day one. And even that pay-per-click advertising then should be cheaper and more optimized, because you've got your SEO in the right place. But yeah, it is only one type of marketing for sure. Cool. We had a couple of questions from Jordan. Thanks for tuning in as always. I recently mentioned setting up a SaaS. Can I share a little around the strategy? I mean, I'll be completely honest. I don't know enough about SaaS. That's why 2025 I want to dig into it a lot more. We have SaaS investment within our business, and we have various projects that we've done via SaaS trustees and that whole route. I understand at a high level that a SaaS pension can invest directly into commercial property, not necessarily residential, but a SaaS pension can also loan money out on a loan agreement to invest in anything. So that could be residential, it could be commercial. The benefits I understand for me is that it is a tax wrapper. I don't have a very good pension at the moment. It's something that I want to kind of push towards to make sure that we do have that tax efficient wealth building kind of strategy going on. But I also like the fact that SaaS trustee and SaaS pensions, I have way more control on it. And I think that's the main reason. Like, setting up a SaaS means that I am, for the most part, in control of that cash, instead of just putting it in stocks and shares type pensions where it's in somebody else's hands. I can use it to then reinvest into XP's projects, into my own projects, into an office for Aura, for example, where Aura is then paying my SaaS rental income for the commercial space that it's occupying. So there are huge amounts of benefits, is what I understand. Again, I don't know enough, and it is something in the next quarter I probably will be sitting down with a SaaS specialist to understand how the whole process works. Is that about the crux of it, Jack? What do you understand?
Yeah, I mean, SaaS obviously stands for self-administered scheme. So it's basically where you're taking ownership of a pension. A lot of people invest into their own SaaS from day one, or if you already have an existing SaaS with a corporate entity, like let's say you worked at British Gas, for an example, you can actually get a transfer value to convert your existing pension, which might be in a pension scheme that's regulated by the pension regulator. You can get a transfer value for them to pay that out of that scheme that you've already got SaaS into your own self-administered scheme. You can't do anything with that money other than invest it as a pension until you're of I think it's the ripe old age of 60 or 65. And in some instances, you actually get a release at 55. But I mean, I don't know all the details, so don't hold me to any of that. But the transfer value is where they work out what that inflationary cost of that value of the capital is going to be if they can just pay you off. So rather than investing that capital and building the pot from a compounding perspective, what they can release it to you. So you take a little bit of a haircut, but it's actually more than today's value because they need to reinvest that over the period, if that makes sense. And I suppose the self-administered scheme is, that it's interesting speaking to SaaS lenders because they're very inflationary. They've got inflation anxiety to some degree because that pot doesn't get any bigger unless they do something with it. There's obviously regulation, as Ben mentioned, and what you can do with SaaS money. We've been in the borrowing seat, and we will be hopefully in one day in the lending seat. And I suppose as it comes to detail, it might be an idea to do a specific section on SaaS, or even maybe even get someone on, Ben. But that's as far as, well, I obviously know bits more like what the limitations are and what we can lend. And I know that some trustees have got a little bit more tighter around what could go where and things like that. But I think we've done enough just considering this is a question for Jordan.
Nice. Cool. Well, I think we've gone on for an hour and 5 minutes. I think we'll probably call it a day. And as an outro, I'll play the video montage. See you later.
Well, and I'll talk you through my new coin phrase as well while that's going on. What was it? Yeah, Ben, it was help to buy and help
Not
to
help
die.
to die. That's it. You got it. All right. See you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.